Heather has done a very, very good PhD, and she's just finishing writing up her results. She's done 3 studies, one with 350 people in it, which has been published in Schizophrenia Research, one with over 100. And the study that she's going to present today is the smallest of the 3, but it's the one where we're looking at whether you can intervene with mindfulness to help people who have high schizotypy and high levels of paranoia. Over to you, Heather.
Yes, so I'm just going to take you through my project today, and it's supervised by Dr. Elena Antonova, Dr. Lucia Balmaja, who you've just met, and Professor Paul Chadwick. I'm going to firstly take you just over a brief overview of the overall project aims and objectives, with a focus on the final study, which is using mindfulness-based intervention to reduce paranoia in high positive schizotypy. So positive schizotypy is a set of personality traits found in the general population, and they're thought to be reflective of the positive symptom domain of schizophrenia. And this covers unusual perceptual experiences and magical thinking, ideas of reference, and suspicious paranoia. So higher levels of these traits are thought to predict sort of psychosis development, but suspiciousness paranoia is thought to be a key risk factor. However, on the other side of the coin, positive schizotypy is associated with increased creativity. So obviously this is a very beneficial aspect, and one which we wish to preserve. And this link seems to be, or the separate lines of research that suggest that this link might be related to reduced information filtering. And in this study, we're looking at reduced habituation as an index of that. So when I talk about habituation to sensory information, if you can imagine somebody popping a balloon in the back of the room that you're in for about 10 minutes, over that 10 minutes, you will habituate to that sound because it's lost its novelty and it becomes non-salient. But if you don't habituate to that, or if you are very slow to habituate to that repetitive noise, this would indicate that you have sort of reduced sensory information filtering. So the first part of the project was looking at this interrelationship and looking at whether positive schizotypy creativity relationship is underlined by reduced habituation to sensory information. The third part of the project, the third study, comes back around to this issue of suspiciousness and paranoia as a risk factor to psychosis. And we look to use a mindfulness-based intervention to target and reduce paranoia whilst preserving conditions thought to relate to creativity. So as Lucia mentioned, the first study has now been published in Schizophrenia Research, but the main sort of takeaway from studies 1 and 2 was that we did indeed find positive schizotypy to relate to creativity, and aspects of the creative process seemed to be beneficial for it. However, it didn't seem to be underlined by reduced habituation as expected, at least in our sample, and this might be down to the paradigm that we used, may just not have been sensitive enough measure to detect differences. However, what was found was that suspiciousness appeared to have a dampening effect on some aspects of creativity for individuals who are high in other aspects of positive schizotypy, namely magical thinking and unusual experiences. So in addition to suspiciousness paranoia being problematic in terms of risk for psychosis, it also seems to be beneficial to reduce this in relation to creativity as well. So I'm just going to focus now on the final study, which is a mindfulness-based intervention for reduction of paranoia. So it was a randomized control trial with an active control condition, and it was focused on the acceptability and feasibility of using an online mindfulness-based intervention. I managed to recruit and complete 24 people who were high on positive schizotypy, and this was including high on paranoia, before COVID sort of took over and stopped us from recruiting anyone else. But we managed to reach the minimum kind of recommended 12 per arm for these kinds of trials. So everybody came in for baseline assessment. We had a measure of self-report, general paranoid ideation. We also had an objective measure of state paranoia, and this was using virtual reality. So a massive benefit of using this kind of paradigm for measuring paranoia is that it's experimentally controlled. So this virtual reality environment was designed specifically to be neutral and non-threatening. So any paranoid appraisal from participants in relation to the avatars, you can be quite confident that it was unfounded. And this VR environment was developed by Lucia and her colleagues at KCL, and it's been shown to be a safe and valid way of measuring state paranoia in both vulnerable individuals and also the general population. So everybody was randomized to one of two conditions. The mindfulness-based intervention was using the Headspace app. And this is a meditation app. It's quite widely used and widely known. And basically it's training you to cultivate an awareness and a non-judgmental receptiveness to each passing moment. And this includes letting go of thoughts of all kinds, any sort of sticky thoughts that might be distressing. And everybody did 10 minutes of these meditations. They're guided for 40 days. The reason why 10 minutes was chosen over the traditional sort of 20 to 45 minute meditations that you'd usually find in interventions like this is because 10 minutes has been shown to be safe for people who are experiencing distressing psychosis, and this is including paranoid thoughts. So it was considered to be safe for individuals with high positive schizotypy who may have a higher incidence of paranoid thoughts or unusual experiences and unusual beliefs. The active control was reflective journaling, and this was also via an app. So participants were asked to just reflect on their daily activities or their goals and values. It was kept quite neutral. And this app was chosen because it's quite closely matched to the Headspace app in terms of its usability and interface. It has similar sort of fun animations like Headspace does, but the key aspect was that it was trackable as well as Headspace. So both apps were trackable in terms of engagement, how many sessions participants were completing and when. And then everybody after 40 days came back for reassessment, so repeated the paranoia measures, including the VR. So retention was excellent, and as well as adherence. We had no dropouts throughout the entire 40 days. So looking at the sort of more or less the best retention rates that you usually see in these types of studies, these online studies, is about 75%. So the fact that we had no dropouts was really good. I think this may have had something to do with the protocol. So I made sure that everybody had face-to-face program orientation at baseline assessment. So this included taking them through the apps that we were going to be using, what was sort of expected of them. We set them up with an account and I gave them a demonstration of the app. And I also gave everybody sort of information leaflets, and this was physical ones as well as PDF to take home. And it was covering any general tips for using the apps and for their activity, and it included frequently asked questions or common problems that they might encounter, such as boredom or not really knowing what they're meant to be doing, or how to sit during meditation, what to do if they feel a bit irritable during meditation. So common things that people find that may contribute to obstacles of practice. I also sent everybody reminders every 10 days with sort of words of encouragement. And I also kept the lines of communication open at all times. So if they had any problems with just the app or what they were doing in general, I made sure that they were, able to contact me at any time. And also normalizing forgetting. So I was very aware that expecting participants to go away and suddenly be doing a new activity that they've never done before for 10 minutes every day for 40 days was quite a big ask. So what I didn't want people to do was to forget accidentally for 2 days or so and then kind of be discouraged and think, oh, well, I'm just going to drop out now. So at the start, I normalized that it was possible, if they forgot, not to worry about it and to just move on to the next day and just pick up where they left off. and I think that was helpful as well. So in terms of changes in paranoia, there were no group differences in self-report general paranoid ideation. However, there were reductions in mean scores for persecutory thinking during the state-of-the-art task. And this was in favor of the MBI group. So the control group didn't show really any change at all, but the mindfulness group did. And they were reliable reductions for a third of participants in the mindfulness group. So this is just basically saying that, you know, these reductions weren't just due to chance, they were reliable reductions. And it sort of indicates that participants were less triggered by the social situation. So when they were in a state social situation, they weren't getting as many persecutory thoughts, kind of, even if their general paranoid ideation hadn't changed. In a state situation, they were less triggered. So in summary, so some aspects of positive schiz-2P seem to be beneficial for creative thinking processes, namely magical thinking and unusual experiences. However, it didn't seem to be underlined by habituation of sensory information in our sample. Like I say, this might just be down to the paradigm that we used. There may be other paradigms that would be more sensitive to detect differences between participants. However, in some cases, high suspicionist paranoia could dampen this positive relationship down, and taking it in addition to it being implicated in increased risk of psychosis, it's really worthwhile working to reduce this. And an online-based mindfulness intervention appears to be an acceptable and feasible way to do this in individuals with high positive schiz-2P. And thank you very much for Mental Health Research UK and the Field Roads Charitable Trust for making this possible. And also thank you to my lovely supervisors who have been amazing.